driving up to my machine shop for this 240 rebuild that I'm doing, and I just figured I'd jump on here and make a little video kind of talking about, I'd say, the 5 top things that you want to ask when or think about when you're looking for a machine shop to rebuild whatever engine you're going to put in your project. If you have experience, or you have some experience, or you don't have any experience looking for a machine shop, it can be a little overwhelming. You don't really know who to trust. Reviews can sometimes be a little shaky. You know, one person could have some great experiences, and then you get somebody on there who's just had a bad experience, and they make the guy or the shop sound like the worst shop in the world. So I'm just going to give you like 5 of my top questions or top things to ask a machine shop when you're calling around looking to have someone do some work on your engine. The first one is, does that shop have any experience with this specific engine that you're looking to have rebuilt? There are many variances when it comes to engine builders, and you want to make sure that they have experience working on your specific type of engine, from an inline 6 to a V8 or a V6, from head work to crank work. There's many variables when it comes to tearing an engine down, inspecting that engine, and then putting that engine back together. And so you want to make sure that that shop has a decent amount. They don't have to have a ton of experience, but you want to know that somebody in that shop has disassembled, measured, and then reassembled those engines before, because there are certain variances in engine builders that you need to pay attention to when rebuilding these engines. So just a simple question, as far as, you know, you ask them, you know, hey, this is what I've got, you know, what y'all's experience with working with these engines. So that's number 1, right? Number 2 is, what all does your shop do in-house? From boring cylinders to honing to decking to line boring. You want to ask what all they do in-house. And the reason why you want to know that is because a good machine shop will pretty much do everything in-house. There might be one thing that they do outside of their shop, but they work with, let's say, one specific company. They've worked with this company forever, and they just allow them to do this one thing at their machine shop for whatever reason it is. And that should be okay if they do that. But if you call the machine shop and you start asking these questions, and they start leading you to believe that they only do a few things in their shop, and then kind of all these other things that kind of farm out, that should be a red flag. And the reason why it should be a red flag is because you got too many hands in the cookie jar working on your motor. And the problem typically is the machine shop double checking the work of the other shop who has done the work on your engine, right? So, you know, let's say that let's say they farm out 2 or 3 of the things that it takes to rebuild your motor. Well, time is money, and they're not gonna, a lot of times they will take for granted that the company doing the work outside the shop is doing their due diligence and going through and checking tolerances, and, you know, double, triple checking tolerances, and then when they receive the equipment back, you know, a lot of times machine shops won't verify, and so they'll just take for granted, and what they'll do is end up throwing everything back together, and then you start getting issues. And when you start questioning these companies, it starts to go sideways, right? They start taking offense, they they don't want to be known for shoddy work, so they get all upset if you start questioning or asking, questioning them when things go awry. So finding a shop that does pretty much all the services in-house is what I would recommend. So I think that kind of explains that. 3. This topic is, let me just say, when you are shopping around, and I'll get back to it, but when you're shopping around or you're talking to these shops, do not interrogate these shops. And what I mean by that is, don't call up with this list of things and start rattling off in the manner in which they feel like you're questioning their integrity as a machine shop, right? Because all of these shops probably think that they are the best thing, since sliced bread. They dot all their I's, cross all their T's. They got it going on. But in reality, we all know that that's not the truth, right? So when you call up, you almost need to sound ignorant. You don't, even if you have experience or you don't have experience, ask questions in a way that almost kind of sounds like you're trying to learn something, not that you're trying to pin their back against the wall and catch them, in one of the questions that you have, right? Okay, so this gets to knowledge, right? And if you don't know anything about machining or whatever, you probably need to jump on YouTube or get to reading a little bit about what all goes into machining an engine block, machining a head, all of these things, because you need to kind of be a little educated when asking these questions, so when they explain it to you, you can catch any sort of red flags, right? So you want to kind of ask about tolerances. You want to kind of ask what tolerances do you measure to when it comes to cranks and rod bearings and heads and valve and deck clearances and all of these things. You want to kind of just ask them in a kind of hey, I'm just trying to learn kind of way. And that will give you a lot of insight into the experience and knowledge of that shop. So being a little educated for sure on your end is going to help you identify which one of these shops is, a go-to or not, right? Okay. Timeline. You definitely need to hone down a timeline. And it's kind of a tricky question as well, because depending on what you're bringing to them will kind of depend on how long it should take, right? And it all varies depending on the shop. A lot of good shops are really, really busy, and so if you're willing to wait the time, right, those are kind of the shops you want to go with. But they need to be able to kind of give you a ballpark time frame, a legitimate ballpark time frame, right? Like I said a second ago, it is going to vary, depending on what you bring them. So if you got a bad crank in your motor, if the tolerance is off and they can't rebalance a crank, that's going to add some extra time for shipping and purchasing a new crank. If your cylinder walls are out of spec and they're going to have to bore them over, or you got to get a new block. If your head's warped, there's so many variables that come into play when it comes to rebuilding one of these engines and machining it back to machining the engine components back into tolerance, right? And so you have to be a little realistic. You can't expect for them to turn around and get you an engine rebuilt and sent back to you in 2 or 3 weeks. If they tell you they can do that, that's a red flag. I'm taking my engine up to the shop right now and the engine has never been opened. This is a 1969 240 inline six. It's been in the truck since forever, that I could tell, and it doesn't appear that this engine has been opened, right? So I have no idea, you know, what this engine's going to hold, right? What kind of little gremlins and stuff that are going to be hiding in here. So I have a realistic time frame. I'm thinking probably 2 months is what it's going to take for me to get this engine to my guy, for him to tear it down, inspect everything, right? And then order parts, wait for shipping to come in, and reassemble. So that's kind of my time frame on this build, right? But if you've been in and out of your motor and you kind of know what's going on with it, and you know you just need a couple things done here or there, you know, realistically it could take less time. But that's my realistic time frame for this motor, right? Okay. So pinning down a decent time is very crucial. That way you can hold them to a little bit of a standard, right? Like, listen, things come up, and you know, delays happen. You're never going to be able to prevent that 100%, but staying in touch, keep communication with the builder, and setting a solid time frame is pretty important. And if they're not willing to do that with you, that's a red flag. You need to they need to be able to be willing to communicate with you, and you on your side can't be a jerk about it either. You can't call all the time, bothering them, worrying that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to give them a little bit of space to do their job and get things done, okay? So that's my little spiel on time frame, right? And then lastly, you need to ask about warranty work. How long do they warranty their work? What are they willing to warranty? What are they not willing to warranty? In the event, let's say that you send your motor off and you get it back and you install it, and then you have issues from oil pressure to, you know, head issues, whatever. How do they go about warrantying and or fixing any mistakes that could possibly be made during the during the machining and or assembly process, right? You kind of want to you want to feel them out on this, right? There is no right or wrong answer. It's whatever you're comfortable with, right? So it's good to just talk about this with them, so you kind of get their mindset, right? I mean, some guys may be like, listen, you bring your engine here, we, you know, machine it, reassemble it, and you throw it in your truck, and, you know, as long as it's got oil pressure, they're good, they're done, right? Because the things that they don't have control over is your ability to reassemble that motor, or not reassemble it, but to put it back in the engine, in the vehicle, and supply it adequate oil, and conduct a proper break-in period, right? There's no way for them to know that you don't just throw that engine in there and get it fired up and send that thing to the moon, and then all of a sudden you got issues and you're trying to blame it on the machinist, right? So there's a little bit of give and take there, and you need to be willing to work with your machine shop and or ask these questions prior to you deciding to go with them, so that so that there's no surprises, that you're not completely pissed off if something happens, and they understand that, hey, this is what we discussed and this is what we're willing to do in this situation. So yeah, that's my top 5 things that you should be asking questions to your machine shop, whenever you decide, or whoever you decide to choose to go with. Another valuable tip, I guess I'll add to the end of this or whatever, is the internet is a very powerful tool. get online to forums. Whatever vehicle you're pulling this engine out of, typically there's a forum for either the motor, the vehicle, a group of individuals that are doing the same thing you're doing, and they may or may not live in your area, but a lot of these pages are nationwide, so you can kind of get on there and ask some questions. Hey, I live in this state, or I live in this region, or whatever. Who recommends a good machine shop in our area? And I would ask 4, 5, 6 different groups, because there's hundreds of groups, I would say, per vehicle, per engine, and their knowledge is valuable, right, to an extent. But what you're looking for is a consensus on, hey, all of these people recommend this guy, and don't be afraid to drive. Look at me, I'm driving 3 hours to drop this engine off at my machinist. So like, you're gonna have to get outside of your little local area, more than likely. This day and age, machining has kind of taken a dip. The world we live in these days is, if it's broke, we'll just replace it with new, and that has had an impact in the machinist world, right? And so I keep on saying machines, but machine shop, engine building shop, that type of stuff. So ask around, ask your buddies, get online, and don't be afraid to get on the road and drive to somebody, because let me tell you, there's nothing worse than dropping an engine off, getting it rebuilt, and getting it back in the vehicle, and all of a sudden you're having issues, right? And it may not be immediate. You may light that engine off, everything's working fine, but if you're a couple thousandths off on tolerances, let me tell you what, within 100 to maybe a couple thousand miles, you're gonna find out things are gonna go wrong. So that's my 2 cents. I hope it helps, and catch you on the next video. Peace.